So without a doubt, Miami's one of the most interesting teams in college football this year because you have Cam Ward and Damian Martinez coming in, Mario Cristobal going into year 3. They have a win total of 9.5. That's tied for the second highest in all of college football, according to our friends at FanDuel. They are viewed in the preseason right now as an ACC contender. I think they're capable of winning it. You look at the way they've stacked recruiting classes, what they've done in the transfer portal, they should have the guys. They should have the horses. They have a lot of big games. You're going to start with Florida, massive game. Massive game in the Swamp. Week 1, maybe the best game of the Week 1 slate, Miami at Florida. I'm so excited for that game. So very excited for that game. You know what the most important game on Miami's schedule is? It's not Florida. It's not Virginia Tech. It's not Florida State. It's Duke. It's Duke. I didn't say most important to their playoff hopes. I just said most important. Because Duke has the potential to really give the sense that Mario Cristobal is not the guy, which I do not believe personally. But you're going into year 3, and Mario Cristobal at this point has not actually accomplished anything major. He hasn't won a bowl game. He's only been to 1. The record's under 500. It hasn't been a sparkling start. I don't think it's been a disaster. The Georgia Tech game was a disaster, but overall it hasn't been a disaster. Hasn't been great. Not yet. But this year they have the potential to be great. So when you have an off season in which you're messaging to the fan base correctly, I'm not saying media outlets are messaging to the fan base. The coaching staff with these moves have an all-in mentality where they look at 2024 and say, we have a chance to win here. Florida State's the preseason favorite to win the ACC. I don't know if they're going to win it. DJ Uiagalelei is fine. He's not bad, but he's not that great. He's not Jordan Travis. So if FSU has the same caliber roster, and I don't know that they do, they have a very good one, but I don't think it's the same caliber as last year, and you've downgraded the quarterback position, which you have. Yeah, they're ACC championship capable. They're not ACC championship guaranteed. I don't look at Florida State and see them as ACC title or bust to have a successful season this year because I think they're 80, 85% maybe of what they were a season ago, just with a less prolific passing attack. They've had a great transfer portal offseason, but when you look at where Miami fits into this picture, the messaging from the coaching staff by bringing in Damian Martinez, who required a good amount of NIL dollars, and Cam Ward, who also required the same. Those guys made moves that kind of leveraged their situations to raise their NIL valuation or how much they could get. Cam Ward went into the NFL draft, and then he came back to Miami. You think that was cheap? My guess is it probably was not, because he's a really talented guy who has NFL potential. So when people like me come here and say, well, Miami should have big expectations, that's because the coaching staff is making us think they should have pretty big expectations, and they should. It's not just a sports book or media members. The coaching staff and the way this roster's been constructed, the way they've recruited over the last couple of years, and the way they talk about Miami football down there, the expectation should be ACC title contender. So then why am I saying Duke's the most important game? Spencer, what are you talking about? Because when you have that sort of preseason hype, when you have those sorts of aspirations, hopes, and capabilities, a lot of programs have the first 2, but they don't have the third one. Miami's got all 3. You can't lose to the guy who you fired to hire this guy. Because Manny Diaz, who I think could do a decent job over at Duke, is not coming into a situation in which much is expected of them here in his first year. Yeah, he's got Malik Murphy at quarterback. But do they have one of the top half rosters in the ACC? I'd say probably not. Maybe they just crack in, but they're closer to the bottom half than the top half. And are they going to have ACC title expectations? No, they're not. By the way, just so we are operating on the same wavelength here, I'm not predicting Miami to lose this game. I was just thinking about their schedule and thought, Manny Diaz had 3 years as the head coach at Miami. He didn't do poorly, but he didn't do great, and they made a change. And if Manny Diaz comes in with a program that is a basketball school, that game is being played in Miami. It is not up in Durham. That is in the state of Florida. That's a home game for Miami. With your new coach, who is much more highly paid than Manny Diaz, going into year 3, and you've got all these expectations. You can't lose that football game. You just simply cannot lose that football game. Because if you lose that one, number one, couple takeaways. Number one, I think it would be indicative of things are not going as planned or as they hoped for the Hurricanes. But number two, the optics of losing such a game would be disastrous. And I have gotten the sense in talking with Alex Dono of Locked On Canes and a few handful of fans. Granted, it's a pretty small subset compared to the entire Miami fan base, but Dono talks to them every day. And what he says is they expect Miami to be better. They expect them to be good, but don't expect them to make the playoff, though they have that potential. They have that capability. If they make the ACC title game, that's great. But if they don't and they're 8-4, 9-3, that's not going to be seen as a failure of a season. It's not going to be hot seat chatter. It maybe could be some warm seat chatter, lukewarm, above average, not room temperature, but it's not going to be hot seat chatter. And so if you lose that game against Duke, Manny Diaz in his first year at a basketball school with an inferior roster against Mario Cristobal in year 3 when they've got big expectations, that can turn the fan base against you, which is why Duke is the most important game. I bet Miami is a fat favorite in that one. They should be. Everything on paper says they will be. I mean, Miami, to be favored going into Florida is pretty impressive. Florida's not a bad team. I don't think they're a great one. They have the toughest schedule in all of college football. Everybody agrees on that. But that's going to be a pretty solid Florida team. Miami's favored in that game for a reason. And if you ask me right now, who would you pick to cover that spread? I might lean towards the Hurricanes. Even though it's in the swamp, even though it's week 1, and those Florida fans will have all the hope and optimism of a great season because their hopes won't have been dashed by their brutal schedule just yet. I think this Miami schedule is plenty workable. You don't have Clemson on there. You don't have NC State on there. You do have Florida State. You do have Virginia Tech, and you do have Florida. Those are probably the biggest games. But the most important game, don't forget about Louisville either. Most important game, boy, you can't lose that one against Duke at home. That would send a lot of the fan base. I think, I'm guessing, I'm inferring. But just ask yourself, if you're a Miami fan listening to or watching this, what would you be thinking or feeling if the Hurricanes walk away from that home game against Duke with any kind of loss, no matter what happens or what the circumstances were? Wouldn't be good. So that is why Duke is the most important game on Miami's schedule this year. If you want me to do this for your team, let me know. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. This episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. No matter what it is, if it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. It's a pretty sweet deal, and you should check it out. $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park, everything you could want, and all the college football gambling odds you could possibly imagine. Every single Week 0 and Week 1 college football game is available on FanDuel right now. All the lines are there. How great is that? Utterly fantastic, because the season is not as far away as you might think. So go check them out. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Win big. Add winning big to your summer bucket list. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and our official sportsbook sponsor here at the Locked On Network.